Hi, I'm Mark from Valor XL. We're all communicators in our small businesses or our nonprofits. We all have a story to tell. And whether it's communicating to internal or external listeners, we want to keep their interest. So today I'd like to talk to you about using Toonly, which is an amazing software that can help you to create high quality animated sequences that you can incorporate into your own video productions. So let's dive right in and take a look at everything that Toonly has to offer. In the comments below this video, I'll include a link where you can go out to learn a little bit more about Toonly. This is not an affiliate link, but this will take you to voomly.com. Voomly is a cloud-based production suite of which Toonly is just one of the components. But when you go to the Toonly page, you can look at the features and the functionality of the standard license as well as the enterprise license to help decide which would be a better choice for you. I did want to mention that in the examples we'll be looking at today, I will be using the enterprise license. So I'll click on the Toonly icon to open it up. You'll first come to an area that looks like this where you'll see the most recent videos that you've worked on, and below is a list of all of the projects that you have created. Now to create something new, all you have to do is click on Create New Video. You can name it whatever you'd like. Let's call it New Toonly Test. And then click on Create. And at this point, the dashboard opens up, bringing you to the area where you'll actually put together all of the elements of your animated video. Now we have a lot going on here, but I'll walk you through everything. There are some functions at the top. There's a vertical toolbar over here on the left, some controls in the lower left-hand corner, and this large area at the bottom, and this is what is referred to as the timeline. Now if you're used to using a video editor, you may be familiar with timelines, but they work a little bit differently in Toonly. In a standard video editing software, the entire project is usually encompassed in one continuous timeline. That's where you bring in all of your video clips, your audio clips, still images, and everything gets assembled there. But in Toonly, every scene in the project has its own timeline. So each time you change scenes, there will be a new timeline where you can add the background, the characters, the objects. You can put in whatever text you'd like, and also the audio files, both a voiceover and also background music. Now to get started, you could simply come up here, click on Scenes, and select one of the options here. By clicking, dragging, and dropping it here, it would open up a template that gave you a ready-made background plus some appropriate characters. But I'd like to build something completely from scratch. So to start, let's come up here and click on Backgrounds. You could go up here at the top and enter anything you liked to search for a specific background, or you can just grab this vertical scroll bar and then maneuver down through until you see something that looks interesting to you. Let's just go with this football ground. I'll click, drag, and drop. And there we have our background. Now, at this point, we're ready to move forward with adding characters. But before we do, I wanted to look down here in the timeline and show you this. As you'll notice, it added a bar down here in our scene that says football ground. But you'll also notice that directly above it is this reddish colored bar beside the option that says camera. Now, I'll talk about the camera function a little bit later on. But one thing you want to keep in mind is that the camera will automatically extend as you make a scene longer. There will always be a bar the full length of the scene corresponding with camera. And right now, if we were to go ahead and construct a scene here, it would be pretty short. So the first thing I'd like to do is hover here, and you see how the cursor now turned into a right and left arrow. If I click, hold, and drag to the right, I can extend this out a little bit, and this just gives us a better length scene to work in. And as you can see, the camera bar automatically increased to match what I did for the background. At this point now, we can go ahead and add a character. I'll click on Characters, As with backgrounds, we could do a search up here at the top, but I think I'll just scroll through and see what we can find, and we'll pick out something that looks like it would be a good fit. Let's go with this one. I'll click, drag, and drop. Now I can click on the image, grab one of the corners, and just drag it to resize it to whatever we would like it to be. So that looks pretty good. You can position it wherever you'd like. We'll put her there. And you'll see that in the timeline, we now have this green bar that corresponds with the image, because if I click on it, now you see the image has this rectangular box around it. But one of the things you'll also notice is that it doesn't extend very far into our scene. It really only goes for a few seconds. So let's take a look at what we have so far. And to do that, what we can do is come up here into the top toolbar and click on Preview, and this will show us what we already have. So there we go, and wow, well, she didn't stay in there very long, did she? So the reason for that is because this is an extremely short clip. Now you'll also notice, if we look at it here, it says idle. And the reason for that is it's giving us a description of the animation type that's associated with this character. So the first thing that I'd like to do here is let's right-click on this, and that will open up our animation settings. So we have control over a couple of different things here. You'll notice that it defaulted to an animation type of idle. And basically what that means is if we keep this set at idle, for the duration of the clip, this character won't do anything. It'll just be a static figure with no movement whatsoever. But that's pretty boring. So let's click here and pick something else for her to do. So let's select clapping. Now, let's look at the preview again. And there she is clapping, but she disappeared pretty quickly. Well, again, that's because that clip only extends for a few seconds into the overall scene. Now, what we could do is we could click, hold, and drag and pull this the entire way over to the right-hand side to the end of our scene. Now, if we do the preview, there we go. We have the figure, and she's staying pretty consistent through the entire scene. She disappeared on us at the end. Now, why is that? Well, if we right-click on the clip again, you'll notice here that there is an in effect and an out effect setting, and they default to bounce. But what I'd like to do is to change each of those to instant. And now, that guarantees that she will be there right from the beginning of the scene, and when the scene is done, she'll still be in frame. So you don't have that disappearance with the bounce at the end. So that looks pretty good. Now, what else can we do here? Because the clapping is okay, but let's put a couple of other things in to give a little bit more variety. If we drag this back to the left, you'll notice that there's a plus sign here. And this gives us the ability to add a new animation type. So if I click here, we can select again from the same drop-down menu. And this time, I'll tell you what, let's go with holding a mobile. So she's got her cell phone in her hand. And let's add one more for good measure. At the end here, let's take it back to idle, to where she is just standing still. And we can shift these around however we'd like. You can click here to make something a little bit longer. I'm going to click on the end and just extend this idle one out to the very end of our clip. And now everything should be lined up pretty good. And now we'll do a preview. We have her clapping, and then we have her using the mobile phone, and then we have her standing idle. Now, the next thing I'd like to do is to add an object. Characters are the figures that we actually animate. We can put movement into them, but objects are static elements in the overall scene. And I'll click on objects, and let's see if we can find a soccer ball. And there we go. Let me click, drag, and drop. We can position this wherever we'd like. And again, you could stretch it by grabbing the corner, but we'll just put that there. Now you'll notice down here, it does not fill the entire scene. So the first thing I want to do is grab that right edge, extend it out to the end of the scene. And I also want to right-click on it and change the in and out effects on that to instant as well. And that way the soccer ball will stay in for the duration of the scene. So that looks pretty good. Now the last thing that I'd like to do for this scene is to add some text, and I'll show you how we can do that. You can click on text. It gives us a couple of different options. Let's select this one. I'll click, drag, and drop. And now if I right-click, it opens up a text settings box. And this is where we can not only enter the text that we want to display, but we can also change the parameters of it. So the first thing I'll do is highlight this and hit backspace. And now this is the area where we can actually type whatever we want to say. You can change the font. Let's go ahead and do that. I'll select this one. We could select the font size if we wanted to. Let me click here and show you what we have. Now, that's really hard to read. I can drag it up here against the sky, and it makes it a little bit easier to see, but I really wanted to put the text right there. Well, what we can do is right-click on it, scroll to the bottom, and you'll see that the color defaulted to this blue. So if I click here and then click on Palette, there's quite a variety of colors that we can pick from. So we'll pick something very light, and now that looks a lot better. I'll drag it over here in the center, and let's also enlarge that a little bit. And there we go. That looks pretty good. Now watch what happens when we do the preview. There's our text, but it went away pretty quickly, didn't it? The first thing I'd like to do is grab this and drag it the whole way over here. I don't want to take it the entire way to the end, because with text fading out, it's good if you can let a few seconds where you're not seeing anything but the place where the text was before. You'll notice these light sections at the beginning and the end. That's the fade in and the fade out. One thing we can do is right-click. We can come down here and we can increase the duration out. Let's do that. Let's move that up a little bit. And now, as you can see here, there will be a much longer fade out period on the text. So here's our entire scene. And now we'll see the gradual fade out. And there you go. All right, so that's scene one. Now let's add a brand new scene and do a couple of different things. So to do that, we'll click here on Add New Scene. And we'll come up to Backgrounds. And this time I'd like to look for a living room. And there, that looks pretty good. We'll click, drag, and drop. And as we did in the first scene, I'm going to click here and drag this to the right just so that we have a little bit longer of a scene to play with. Now, I think for this, before I put a character in, I'd like to add an object. And I think for this, I'd like to put in a cat. So let's see what we have to pick from here. And let's go with this one. So I'll click, drag, and drop, and let's resize him a little bit. And there you go. I'm going to put him right there. Now, this is an object and not a character. And as a result of that, I don't have the ability to animate this the way I could a character. So I can't actually make his legs move. But I would like to make this cat move across our scene and jump up on this couch here. So how can we do that? Well, the first thing I want to do is to come down here. I want to grab that right edge and extend the cat clip the entire way over here so that it's going to be displayed throughout our whole scene. I also want to right-click and set the in and out effect to instant. That way we don't have that bouncing take place, so the cat will be there for the entire scene. But how do we actually get it to move from here to here? Well, if you come down here and click on the Maine Coon cat bar right here, when I did that, you see how at the very beginning and the very end, these small diamond shapes kind of lit up for us. Those are what are called keyframes. And that is basically how you set a starting an ending point for something in an animation sequence. So what I can do is click right there, and this is where we're going to start. So this is at the very beginning of our scene where the cat will be. I want the cat to end up there. So I'll click here for the ending keyframe. So at the end of our scene, I'll click and drag, and we'll put the cat right up there on the couch. And now, if we come up here and do the preview, we'll see, first of all, our girl clapping using the phone and then standing still because it's going back and playing our first scene. And now we have the cat moving across the scene and going up there onto the couch. And there you go. Now what I could do, so that I'm not previewing both of the scenes, I could just come over here and hit play, and that'll show me just the elements for this particular scene. So that looks pretty good. Now what I'd like to do in this scene as well is have somebody walking with the cat. So let's bring it back to the beginning. Let's go into characters, and I think I'd like to try to find some smaller character that could just kind of walk alongside the cat, and this will kind of give you an idea of how you can combine an animated figure along with the movement of an object. So let's use the girl. We'll bring her in here. I'll click and let's resize her a little bit so that she's a little bit more in scale with the cat. And what I'd like to do is move her over in front of the cat. Now there is the bar reflecting her, and right now it's idle, so she's just a static figure. So the first thing I want to do is grab the right-hand corner, extend it the whole way over here so that she's in for the entire scene. I'll right-click on the bar, and I'll change the in and out effect to instant so that we don't have her bouncing in and out. But what I'd also like to do here is have her walking. So what we can do is we can right-click, and let's change the animation type from idle to walking. But let me show you what happens when we do that. Let's watch this scene. And you'll see that the cat is walking over, but she's walking in place and really not going anywhere. It's almost like she's on a treadmill. Why in the world is that? Well, as we did with the cat, we need to establish for her how she will move throughout the course of the scene. So if we click down here on the green bar for the figure, that illuminated the little keyframes at the beginning and the end. So we'd like her to start right where she is. So I'll click the start keyframe. So at the beginning of the scene, the girl will be there. Now I'll click the end keyframe, and at the end, I want her to be standing over here right beside the cat. So now, if we do the preview, she should follow the cat over to the sofa. And there you go. If you went with a shorter duration of the scene, the walking wouldn't take as long. But that's a good way to combine an animated figure with an animated object. Not animated in the same respect. We don't actually have the leg movement, but we have the physical movement from a starting point to an end point. All right, and let's add one more scene. So I'll click here on Add New Scene. And for this one, let's see, I think I'd like to do something in a theater. And there you go. We'll select that. Drag and drop. All right, now let's add a character. And let's see, let's get this guy here. We'll put him there. We'll make him a little bit larger and position him right there. Now, for this particular example, I'm not worried about having this guy walk. We'll just keep him idle. But we will grab the background and extend that to get a longer scene. And I'll do the same thing with the character animation so that it literally runs for the duration of the scene. I'll also right-click and select the in and out effects as instant so that we don't have him leaving the scene. Now, if we preview it, there you go. Well, it's kind of boring just seeing him standing there. So what I'd like to do in this scene is actually have this character talk. So in order to do that, we need to add a soundtrack for him. And you have a couple of different options. If you come down here under audios, it's really a great idea if you're doing a formal project with Toonly to go ahead in advance and create a script or at least have a storyboard so that you have a really structured format to work from. It's a great guide as you're putting things together. It'll be a big time saver in the long run. For this example, we're not going to do that, but you probably in a formal video setting might have a situation where you have already recorded a narration, in which case you could simply upload the audio file, bring that in, and work from there. But in this particular situation, we're going to record one as we're working on the animation itself. So we can come down here, and if I click beside this microphone icon, this is giving us a variety of options. Now I am actually using an audio interface here, which I've selected. But when I click on this button, it will give us a countdown, and then it will record for the entire duration of the scene. So I'm going to just start this here, and then I'll just say something, and we'll make the recording. This is a recording to test how the lip sync function of Toonly works with an animated character as you speak throughout the duration of the scene. And there you go. Now, in order to synchronize mouth movement with what we just recorded down here, we'll need to do a couple of things. So the first thing I want to do, let's right click, and we'll keep that about where it is, I guess. I want to go into the character animation itself, and I'll right click, and we'll come up here, and right here is an option that says lip sync. So if I click, I can now click on the drop down arrow, and if I select voiceover, it automatically knows that this is what I'm selecting down here. So now let's preview this scene, and we should hear what I just recorded and also see the mouth movement right there. This is a recording to test how the lip sync function of Toonly works with an animated character as you speak throughout the duration of the scene. And there you have it. Now, another thing that I'd like to do in this particular scene involves the camera function that we talked about a little bit earlier on. Now, with the camera, it's currently off. So the first thing I'm going to do is toggle over to turn it on. And when I do, I want you to watch up here on the main screen. When I turn camera on, you see how it changed the shading? It definitely gets a lot lighter. Looks like it kind of has a filter over it. The camera function enables you to basically almost act as though you were holding a camera and moving it around your scene. You have the ability to pan, to tilt up and down, and even to zoom in and out. So in order to do that, what we need to do is to determine how we want the scene to unfold. So I think what I'd like to do is start down here in the lower left-hand corner and then gradually pull back until the entire scene fills the screen. So if we come up here to camera, again, we have the start and end keyframes. So let's click on the start one first. And if I grab, click, and drag, this filter area is showing me what I'll actually be starting with for that first keyframe. So let's start really small on the very first keyframe. Let's have it open, displaying just that. And on the last keyframe, it's defaulting to filling the whole screen, and that's what we want, so we'll just keep it there. Now, I want to show you something. I'll come down here and click play, and you'll see this play, but when you do, you'll notice that we're not really seeing the effect. We're just seeing a representation of how it will be applied. This is a recording to test how the lip sync function of Toonly works with an animated. So it will actually take doing a preview where we play all the scenes back to really see how that will pan out. But before we do that, there's one last thing that I'd like to do, and that is to add some music. I'd really like to bring background music into play through all three of our scenes. Now, what I'm going to do, because I want that music to be continuous throughout the whole production, is to come back here to scene 1. And this is where we're going to start, and this is where we'll add the audio. Now, again, you could upload your own file if you already have something you want to use, but we also have these examples here. And so what I think I'll do is just go ahead and select one of these, and let's take it, and we're just going to drag down here into the music path, and there you go. Now, this particular piece that we're using is 2 minutes long, and I know that our overall video is much shorter than that. So let me show you something. If we right-click on the music track, the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm really going to reduce the volume, because I don't want the volume to overpower our narration when we get a little bit further on. And you'll notice here that this defaulted to play through. So basically what that means is that as we click on scene 2 and then on scene 3, you can see there's the music continuing to play. So as the scenes transition one into the other, the music will not be broken in any way. It will be a continuous piece. Let's go back to scene 1. And if we right-click, the other thing I'd like to do is click on Fade Out. And the reason for that is when we get the whole way through to scene 3, I don't want there to be an abrupt end where the scene ends and the music just stops. So because we selected Fade, now you can kind of see here that it's getting a little bit darker as it nears the end of scene 3. That means that when we do a preview, the sound will fade out at the end. So let's recap briefly what we have. In scene 1, we did the figure with a couple of different animation types, and we did the text that faded in and out. In scene 2, we had an object which we put motion on to move across the scene, and we also had an animated figure which followed the object. And then in scene 3, we had a figure with the lip sync for the mouth movement. We added the live recording of the voiceover, and then for all 3 scenes, we added music with a fade at the end. So let's go back, take a look at the preview, and see what we have. This is a recording to test how the lip sync function of Toonly works with an animated character as you speak throughout the duration of the scene. Now, you probably noticed that the voice was a little bit hard to hear against the music. So what I'd like to do is to come down here to the voiceover track, right-click, and I'm going to go ahead and increase that volume the whole way up to 100%. So let's see what that sounds like. Toonly works with an animated character as you speak throughout the duration of the scene. Now, there are a lot of little tweaks that we could do in here. For example, with this girl, if we came down here and right-clicked, you can select the eye emotion. So we could say, well, let's make her happy. And now, as we watch that scene, there you go. She looks a little bit more excited to be walking alongside the cat. Well, I think everything that we did here looks pretty good. I'm very pleased with what we came up with. So at this point, let's save the project. Our movie has been successfully saved. And now the last thing that we can do is export it. So we can click here. You can select whatever file path you want to export it to. And you can also select the resolution. And I'd like to make this 1920 by 1080. This will be 100% maximum quality, and it will be an MP4 format. So we'll click on Export. And now our video has successfully exported. So we can close that. And if you come back out here to My Videos, Now you'll see it's not only listed as the most recent thing we've worked on, but it's also in our projects. And that's how you go about creating and exporting a video in Toonly. As you can see, there's a lot to Toonly, and quite honestly, we really just kind of scratched the surface today. So I do suggest that you go out and visit their website to get a better understanding of the various features, and that can really help you to make a good determination as to whether or not it's an appropriate fit for your small business or nonprofit. When we embrace technology, we automatically assume that we're moving forward as an organization. But is that really the case? How do you know if you are moving forward? Well, if you click on the link in the description below this video, you can download a free PDF called Taking Your Organization's Temperature. It'll give you a really good insight into the approach that you're taking so that you know whether it's one that's inactive, reactive, or proactive. If this was a beneficial video for you, would you please give us a like? And in the comments below, let me know, have you ever used Toonly, or have you used any other video production software that enables you to do animations? I'd be really interested to know what your experiences have been. I'd like also to invite you to subscribe to the Valor Excel channel. We have new content on a regular basis, and all of it is specifically geared toward small businesses and nonprofits. I really appreciate you joining me today. I invite you to come back to the next installment of Valor Excel. And remember, we are committed to helping you do smart work. Thanks again. I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.